The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, helping customers make the switch to solar for savings, energy security, and tax incentives. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, we'll explore even more music happening in the Berkshires.
There's so much music happening in the Berkshires, and we promise it's not all happening at Tanglewood.
But this one does just happen to be at Tanglewood. In addition to celebrating the 150th birthday of Kusavitsky, the weekend is also the Festival of Contemporary Music at Tanglewood, and we'll speak with the composer who's been teaching at the Tanglewood Music Institute this summer, and he'll have work performed at the festival, Grammy Award winner Stephen Mackey.
We'll also be joined by resident wordster Emily Brewster, who will explain whether we should be aiming further or going farther. But first, a journey into immersive theater into the hills of Ashfield, where we lay our scene.
Last night around this time, I didn't see it myself, but the heron flew by. So we're hoping that you might be able to see that tonight, too.
Cameos from the heavens.
Come to us, Heron.
Heron? Heron? Up there. A certain miracle can happen to you, Heron. You know that. In the water. The water. Change from a bird to a fish to... I feel certain there's something human within you. Oh, come, Heron. Who do you want to be? Come, Heron.
We are once again at Double Edge Theater in Ashfield, where they are performing their summer spectacle, which, I'm sad to report, is already sold out. Sad to report to you, the listener, but happy for our friends at Double Edge Theater. And there is a waiting list, so don't give up hope entirely.
Right. People drop out all of the time, life happens to them, and then they can't go see theater, which means opportunities for you.
Yes. And this is a big year because the summer spectacle, which Double Edge is arguably most famous for, that happens inside and outside on this farm in Ashfield, is for the first time, I think, not being directed by founder Stacy Klein, but it's being directed by
Jennifer Johnson. I'm a co-artistic director.
and
Travis Coe, I'm also co-artistic director, but it is the second time that she is not directing.
So last year she didn't do either?
A couple years ago.
4 or 5 years ago.
What is the name of this production?
This performance is called The Heron's Flight, and it is inspired by the heron, among many other things, inspired by the heron who hangs around here and kind of lives here during the summer months.
It is directed by you two, but who wrote it, or how does it come about?
First of all, we are an ensemble company, so we work together for a very long time. So there's a lot of writing with the body, there's a lot of writing with the emotions and all those things. But Jennifer and I really have written a lot of the text in this and also adapted from different other inspirations that we've had.
Tell us a little bit about the community of Double Edge Theater, because it's above and beyond just this one big indoor-outdoor spectacle every summer. It's a year-long place where theater gets developed from people all over the place, with lots of people who live here, who live near here, and who come from all over the place.
Yes, this is actually our 30th year in Ashfield. So it's an exciting year for us, and we have been celebrating all year. We are, as Travis mentioned, an ensemble company. We are based here in Ashfield. I think everyone in the ensemble and most of us from the company live here. We're a company of about 25 people. The ensemble itself is 11 people. And yes, we do performances and programs all year long. We have training programs, new performances, guest performances. And the way that we develop work, as Travis was mentioning, is we develop what we call training. And we also have training workshops. So we each have kind of our own portal that we enter. Some people are musicians, some people are writers, some people focus on dramaturgy or actors' dramaturgy. So we sort of all get together and collaborate under kind of an umbrella idea. And this year we really wanted to focus on mythology. So we have different kinds of mythology. We have some Greek mythology, which Travis can speak to, and also, as I mentioned, this kind of mythology that we've developed around this heron who lives here and who we see as a real sort of harbinger of good luck and fortune. Thankfully, the heron has really been around this summer because, as I've been saying, if she was not, we would be exposed as frauds. But she's here, and in fact, she has a baby with her. So sometimes she's alone, flying alone. Sometimes she's with her baby, but we see her. She's very close right now, so that we are taking that as usual as a good sign.
Especially in work like this where it's ensemble driven both in process and in finality, how does nature come into play with how you write this beyond just the title and inspiration for the whole thing, but the show is inside and outside? How does that affect what you end up making for the final piece?
I mean, I think it is the other partner in the summer show. Really, you can't ignore it. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to just do this thing here, because nature changes every day and there could be something different. So you really have to be super responsive to it. But we know that we're going to do this indoor-outdoor spectacle, and we sort of pick certain sites on the farm center that the play will sort of move through. And so all those sites play a major role in how our thinking is. It's like, oh, we're going to be in the garden, so we want to do this that, would be good for the garden, or the pond, water. What can we do that would be a water feature or something like that? So it plays a major role in this summer.
I mean, so major that we had an incredible thunderstorm the other day, which absolutely changed the landscape in one of the performance areas. And we realized that is probably going to be true throughout the summer, because it's a new performance area, one we're just developing this summer, and it's very unpredictable, which is good for us, I think, because it kind of keeps us moving and trying and collaborating with where we live, and that's what we like to do in the summer, for sure.
I think it's also the nature, like what Jennifer was just saying about the ongoing process that we're in, and like you're here to see a preview, and this is like the show will be different in a week from now, 2 weeks from now.
So theater, that's what makes it exciting.
Constant process. So the nature is a part of that processing as well.
It's also worth noting that this isn't just like an old farm that you just come and plop a play on outside. It's like year after year after year. This has been, I've been with Odysseus on a journey, and I've been with Shahrazad here, and like so many areas that when I walk here, even when it's not a summer spectacle, I'll be like, oh, that's Calypso's island, or like it's a living set because it's nature and it's outside, but it's also been crafted and sculpted and turned into this thing, I guess, artistically and in my imagination from coming here so frequently.
Well, and I think that's interesting too, with the nature and the landscape, because there's sculptural pieces all over. Do you turn them into something else, or do you use them as they appeared on the landscape as part of the theater experience?
Right, like with some of the things, like we have a labyrinth, or we have sculptures or cairns or a mosaic, and all of those were made specifically for performances. But we don't want to destroy these beautiful pieces just because we're not doing the performance anymore, so they have absolutely become part of the landscape. And I think that that's also what you're referring to when you're like, oh, I remember this. So all of these performances still kind of live here.
Agreed. And the repurposing of that,
Yes.
It's like those things they transform. They're touched by so many different people, and that soul, that spirit is like that continues on. And I love that about this space, is that you use a site and it's like it becomes something totally different every single year, and that's the magic part.
It builds its own mythology into the land.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of mythology, we mentioned that it's based on the mythology of the actual herons that live here at Double Edge in Ashfield.
I'm so happy that you have herons, because there's none where I am. The eagles came in and chased them all out.
You got eagles. Those are cool.
Yeah, but herons are cooler. Herons are prettier when they fly, and they're just so beautiful when they get to the water, and eagles are okay.
What, do you not love America?
Yeah.
Whoa.
It does seem like you don't love America.
Politics light.
What's some of the other mythology that's been woven into this that we may be looking for?
So I'm working right now a lot with Greek mythology, specifically this novel that I read, which is Madeline Miller's The Song of Achilles.
Oh, yeah.
And for me specifically, what really started it was this queer relationship between Achilles and Patroclus. And I had never really, in my sort of ancient Greek research, had come across a sort of a version of that story, and so I fell in love with that.
Should I devour my pain with this feast? Gods are not fair for taking the one that I loved!
There is no law of Enos that says that gods must be fair. And perhaps, yes, it is the greatest grief, after all, to be left on the earth while our loved one is gone.
Is this feeling of love and then loss what it means to be human?
Then there was just other characters that sort of came out of that, like Chiron, which is a centaur. And so I wanted to really play with that this year.
Our master of ceremonies has arrived!
Don't be afraid, dear guest. He is not quite man nor horse. A centaur of medicine and war. A living there.
I thought there's the animals around this land, and then I was like, okay, what are some other, mythological creatures that could be in dialogue and conversation?
Animals could become human beings, and humans could become animals. There was no difference. They all spoke the same language.
Because, mythology throughout time has always been a way to kind of also understand the world and pose questions about the world that we're living in. And I feel that in the times that we're living in right now, the Song of Achilles, the Iliad, it's like the war that's coming and the wars that are. Globally, it felt like that was a piece that I really wanted to sort of touch upon in this summer.
And two lovers caught up in what is, at least in the Iliad, really referred to as kind of a pointless war also. Like everyone gets dragged into this thing because of this one dude and the girl he lost, and now all of Greece is involved.
Totally. And that's, we're not focusing so much on that specific story, but at least the character of Chiron as someone who is a teacher of heroes, a teacher of medicine and war. And so looking at that sort of duality. What does that mean to really be a teacher of medicine and war? And that was really interesting for me. I'm still exploring that. Like, what is that duality?
We're excited to explore it with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there a specific meaning to herons in Greece?
I was just looking. I saw a lot of them have the feeling of transformation, of good luck, good fortune. So that actually goes through a lot of different, like Native American, different communities also have similar. So I think that's really cool.
Protector of the water.
Yes.
Perseverance. New beginnings, and that's kind of great for us this year. The heron is really apparent in a lot of different cultures, and all of us sort of came with like, well, here is this, and here's this example. And I think perseverance and potential and grace are really kind of values of double edge. So it's kind of a perfect
and things that we really need right now, especially in the world that we're living in. So I feel like it is really, as a being, I feel like it's really important for this time and these transitions that we're going through, these transformations that we're encountering, both beautiful, painful, not so graceful, but graceful, at different times. I mean, so I feel it's just like the right time to be doing this piece.
The only way to know is to fly.
You cannot fly. These wings are made of dream, nothing more.
Are you sure about that?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Break a leg tonight.
Thank you.
I'm inviting you to follow your heart's deep desires and to immerse yourselves in a world of mystery, in magia. Let the festivities begin.
As we mentioned, this run of the Heron's Flight is currently sold out, but you can put yourself on the wait list by emailing tickets at doubleedgetheater.org.
On the way, digging into composer Stephen Mackey's storied musical past to hear better how he envisions musical futures in his scores.
And we'll next find out from word nerd Emily Brewster if that means he's pushing his music farther or further.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering Co-op Advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop. NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com.
How are you?
Okay. Things are very hectic. Yeah.
Yes.
How about for you all?
The same. That is a really good way to describe it.
What the hectic?
I am now curious about where hectic comes from, though. It's kind of a funny word, right?
Yes.
14th century comes from Greek, meaning habitual or consumptive. Huh.
Oh.
Wow. The original meaning was of relating to or being a fluctuating but persistent fever, as in tuberculosis.
Oh.
Wow.
Yuck.
What's wrong, Doug?
That's another thing. I'm right as the mail.
So at first, when you were hectic, you were dying.
It sometimes feels that way, Emily Brewster.
Yeah.
When things get really hectic, it does feel that way.
Yeah. Deep sigh.
Anyway.
Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam Webster, our dictionary in Springfield. Sometimes I wonder if we can take these questions about the English language further. And then other times I wonder if we can take these questions about the
push them farther?
English language farther. Way to cut off my intro, Khalees! What is the difference between further and farther, other than the fact that Further is a music festival hosted by my least favorite band?
Wait, is it really?
The Grateful
There's
Dead.
a Further festival?
There used to be. I don't know if there still is. They keep retiring and unretiring.
I mean,
so how can
they're
we...
a nebulous thing of awful anyway. Oh, sorry. I'm not supposed to express political opinions on this show.
That's not political. That's just kind of creative. But anyway, that was a Grateful Dead tangent that I didn't know we were going to go on. But Emily Brewster, Further? When do we use Further? And when do we use
long,
Farther?
Strange trip. Thank you. I didn't think we were going to go there, but there we did.
What a long, strange trip it's been.
And then you went there again.
Further and farther are often used in exactly the same context, and there are plenty of places where you can use either one, and it's perfectly fine. Do you have any sense personally about further and farther? Is there a place where you feel like, oh, I would definitely only use further, or a place where I would definitely only use farther?
No, I think it's just like a general sensibility. Like, I usually think of further as putting a limit on something and farther as extending a limit on something.
Ooh, interesting.
I have no idea. I had some idea last week's conversation about sympathy versus empathy. But this week, I'm always just doubting myself whether I'm using the correct one or whether there is one correct one.
Yeah, like further, I generally use like, we can't do this any further, or like, we can't go any further with this. And farther, I'm usually talking about something we're aiming for. It's aspirational. We're going farther.
Is any of this true or matter, or is this all in our head?
I mean, the whole language is in your head.
True.
Fair enough.
It's all in your head.
Yeah.
Yes. So if Khalees makes these distinctions, I'm sure there are other people who do also. There are also distinctions that you both make as native speakers of English that you're not even aware of. But we'll just back up a little bit. Khalees, I think your distinction is really fascinating.
Oh.
And I think that other people probably make the same distinction or a similar distinction unconsciously, subconsciously. Anyway, yeah. An interesting thing is that this pair of words, they've been used interchangeably for much of their histories, and their histories are extensive. We started with further only in Old English, so it is as old as the language is. And then in the 14th century, farther developed as a variant of further. Neither word has any relationship to the word far.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
was wondering if that was it.
hilarious.
And then I was wondering, is it an accent thing?
That's what I was thinking. Farther might be an accent thing.
Father.
Must we go farther?
Mother! Father, Father, I don't want any of that.
Do we know if that's why that farther sprung up after further because of pronunciation? And because that was kind of an ungovernable time linguistically, right? Because people didn't have access to as many written documents and things of that nature.
I think of it more as like if you imagine like an Irish person with a thick accent or a Scottish person with a thick accent saying further, it will probably sound closer to farther.
It's very, very possible, but this is the 14th century we're talking about, a period of time when English was really just emerging from, a several hundred-year period where there was basically no written record of English, because this is the time in the aftermath of the Norman invasion when a bunch of these French Normans landed and took over the government. They took over like court, everything official became governed in England by the French language. So there's very, very little written record of English until the 14th century when Chaucer starts writing and others start writing, and we start seeing a written record of English again. That's when farther came into the picture. And sure, it's very possible that it developed because of dialectal use and shifts in, the language, it was a very tumultuous time for the English language.
So further comes first, farther comes second. They were used interchangeably for a long time. Do they have subtle nuances in the way that we use them, or a preferred use even with Merriam Webster in today's language?
Merriam Webster prefers what the speakers of the language prefer. We just follow what people do. But farther and further both have historically functioned as adverbs and adjectives. And then further also functions as a verb. Farther's never done that job. Will this program further our aims? Meaning to promote, to push forward. That verb meaning of further is one that just belongs to further, so we can put that one aside. But the other meanings get more complicated. Farther, as an adjective, now only means more distant or more remote. It used to mean, and not that long ago, it used to mean going or extending beyond. You might say that someone is going to pursue farther education. But now we don't. We only say someone is going to pursue further education.
Farther is no longer a synonym for more.
Right.
But further still is.
Yes, right. It can mean additional, right. And farther cannot. Now, farther as an adverb also used to mean to a greater degree or extent. So that is the meaning that we also have with farther adverb. We were further annoyed by the noises coming from the alley. We're going to discuss this any further. We used to be able to say, we being native English speakers comfortably without feeling like we were misspeaking, we used to be able to say, we're not going to discuss this any farther. And so you will still see this in literature, especially 19th century literature, early 20th century literature, but we really don't say it anymore.
But when you say it, it doesn't sound wrong. It sounds perfectly
normal. We're going to
normal.
discuss this any farther?
Yeah, it doesn't feel weird.
It's only slightly weird. It's like the uncanny valley of language. It's like so close, but so far away.
That was a stretch even for you.
I loved it.
Well, compare discuss any farther with proceed any farther.
Proceed any farther, proceed any further.
Proceed any further.
Or discuss any farther.
Discuss any further. I would say proceed any farther, but discuss any further. So does farther maybe in my mind, have to do with going down the road?
With actual motion?
Even though there's the song Further On Up the Road, right?
Farther on up the road.
Not a Grateful Dead
song.
Farther, they probably covered it, though.
Boo. Stop looking up the Grateful Dead while we're talking.
I'm seeing if they're doing a cover of this particular song.
Please don't put it in. You know you're going to hate it, and we're all going to hate it too.
I know. Yeah, they did. Anyway,
boo.
Continue, Emily Brewster.
Farther seems really to have limited itself in, and this is a pretty recent change, in the last maybe 40 years, to meanings that have to do with distance, whether that distance is spatial or temporal or metaphorical. And further has continued to also involve meanings that have distance, but also has these other meanings like additional, moreover, right, in addition to, and again, that help forward, promote meaning. But farther is just, it's tightening its rein, and it is, now mostly about distance. This for a long time was what usage commentators would prescribe. They would tell people you should not use further, or you should only use farther for distance. And I guess maybe that landed well for some generations and then became a little bit entrenched. But it's certainly true that farther has just become more limited in a way that I think is very interesting.
People looked at the far part of farther and decided to impose the limits of that word on the other one, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, we do try, we as in, speakers of English, we try to bring logic to our deeply illogical language.
But you're saying that there is no etymological connection between the word far and the word farther. We have just made this happen in contemporary use of that word farther.
Because they look the same.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It does make sense, but it's not just in contemporary. I mean, it's had these meanings relating to distance since the 14th century. So maybe that was influencing the word back then. I don't even know. But we do know that farther only exists because it is a variant of further.
But just as Merriam Webster is always teaching us, it is not wrong to use one or the other. Some of the native speaker stuff that we do is going to naturally push us in one direction or the other.
That's a different band.
But essentially interchangeable.
Yes. I mean, well, I'm thinking about in a case, like where further can mean furthermore, furthermore, I want to go into this, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
We might say further, we can discuss blah, blah, blah. But we would never say farther, we can discuss blah, blah, blah. There's not enough history of that use to make it sound natural to our ears.
We could do it just to mess with people.
Farthermore.
That's always an option. It really is. But if you want to communicate and you want to communicate clearly and effectively, you might opt for things that sound more idiomatic so that your listener will pay attention to the content of what you're saying and not how you're saying it.
Does that kind of mean that like furthermore is just kind of like saying more, even more?
Furthermore, I mean, sure, but redundancy in language is not, those kinds of redundancies, since they're not transparent, they bother some people, but I think they're not noticeable enough to be bothered by most of us.
Furthermore sounds so fancy, too, that it's just fun to use.
Yes.
Furthermore, actually.
No.
So that's the scoop with further and farther.
I hope this linguistic insight does not ripple your perception of the English language or give you the U.S. blues about how English is used in this country or something to do with scarlet begonias.
I don't think you should push those references any further.
Me either.
Why do you do it to yourself, Monty?
I don't know.
I don't know.
And then he's going to put it underneath us talking. It's going to be the worst.
We should go no further.
It is the worst.
People like what they like.
That's fine.
We like not this. If you've got a question for the Word Nerd that'll push us even farther down the lexicographical rabbit hole, email thefab413@nepm.org.
Up next, we travel back to Tanglewood to talk with contemporary composer and Grammy winner Stephen Mackey.
We do like him.
He's great.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
I had this piece based on dictionary.com words of the day, and the title of the piece was Chivalry, which is one of the words of the day, and dictionary.com on that day had that be the word of the day again, and they said chivalry, and they gave the definition, and they said title of a composition by Stephen Mackey. So that was good.
That's awesome. We'll allow that, although we are predisposed to the dictionary in Springfield, Merriam Webster, so competes with dictionary.com. We'll let it go this time.
Okay.
It's fine. Yeah. This summer's Festival of Contemporary Music is from July 25th through 29th, which is in its 60th anniversary year and is under the direction of 2022 Kennedy Center honoree Tanya Leone and Grammy-nominated composer Stephen Mackey.
Stephen Mackey is here with us right now at Tanglewood. Grammy-nominated Stephen Mackey.
Well, actually, I'm a Grammy winner.
Well, also Grammy-nominated.
Yeah, I was nominated
you have to be
and
nominated
won.
in order to win.
You have to go through that whole thing. I've been nominated more times than I've won.
What did you win for?
A piece called Lonely Motel, a disc, a CD called Lonely Motel.
Nice. Did you get to go to the ceremony?
You know, I had a premiere the same night, and I thought, because you don't know that you're going to win.
Right.
So I said, do
not
I go to
ranked.
a sure thing, a world premiere, which is a great thing, or do I go to this thing and maybe not win and have gone all the way? And so I went to my premiere.
I mean, it's fine. They send you the award in the mail anyway.
I
so.
have the statue in my study.
Where do you have yours?
Oh, it's in my bookcase, just so that accidentally, if I'm on Zoom, people can see it.
Who accepted the award on your behalf?
People from the ensemble. There's a group called Eighth Blackbird, and they accepted it.
Well, Grammy winning and also nominated Steve Mackey joins us. The eclectic composer writes a lot of music for electric guitar. As a kid growing up in Northern California, it turns out you were obsessed with blues rock guitar, but that is not where the story picks up.
The BSO is going to be performing his Urban Ocean at the Shed on Friday, July 26th at 8 p.m. You can still get tickets at tanglewood.org. Shameless plug.
But you're driving around Northern California. You're listening to rock and roll like
Yeah.
kids do.
Yes.
But you are looking for and hear something from Beethoven, right? That
That's
changes
correct.
your life.
My life was changed by an E flat. As a blues guitar player, you're always looking for the blue notes. That's why they call them, notes that just kind of don't quite fit properly into the harmony, but they hurt so good. I now actually teach a seminar called Writing Wrong Notes, RIGHTING, that sort of searches for that. So we're driving along with my brother, and we'd normally be listening to rock music, but my brother stuck in this 8-track tape. I don't know, you're all too young.
I
right?
remember that. We didn't have one in the car. But.
Yeah. Put in an 8-track
I have
tape.
stories about 8 tracks. Actually,
Yeah, right.
my frat, because I joined a frat in college.
Oh, my goodness.
There was a dude in my frat who used to take CDs and albums and put them on 8-track
Wow.
for us to play in the 8-track player of the lounge at our
Yeah,
parties.
that's a real retro thing.
Yeah.
Right. So we were driving around, and Beethoven's last string quartet, Opus 135, second movement, Scherzo, has this simple little rollicking tune, and then it all collapses onto this E flat. So it goes ba-da-dee-dum, dum, da-da-da-dee-dum, dum, 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 dee, dee. And it's like hard to describe that note. It doesn't behave like it's supposed to. The rhythm breaks down from this, yickety, yickety, boopity, boop to this kind of crazy rhythm. And it really, I had to rewind that. Let's hear that again.
It's an 8-track. You have to wait till the track goes all the way around again.
That's right. And so that was the bluest note I'd ever heard. I said, that's what I want to do. Some other factors, and at that time my band was getting some rejections from people the next level of our career, and they're saying, your band, you know how to play your instruments, and your band's really tight, but your originals are kind of weird and hard to dance to. And so after hearing this Beethoven, I took a music appreciation class, heard some more classical music, and heard Stravinsky ballets. Now that music is really weird and hard to dance to. Yet people dance to it.
Eventually. First they started riots, and then they danced.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to start a riot.
It's very rock and roll.
Yeah.
And we're here at Tanglewood with Steve Mackey, who's going to be doing something somewhat rock and roll this Friday, performing the Urban Ocean at the Shed, Friday, July 26th, 8 p.m.
Even though those blue notes and those interesting things beyond cluster chords, because we're talking more about those notes that just kind of peek their head out and you're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
But I think that of your work as being particularly percussive. There's a lot of work with rhythm in your pieces in combination with those notes that kind of stick out. What is it about rhythm that you want to impart in tandem with making those notes?
Well, absolutely. I mean, rhythm and pitch are inseparable. And as I was telling my conversion story with the Beethoven, the rhythm is essential. If it just went to that note, who cares? But we create the illusion of cause and effect. And Beethoven, when he goes to that E flat, it's a striking note. By having the rhythm blow the heck out of that little jig that was happening before, it makes that note more important. So absolutely, you're right. And for me, I think, coming up when I came up in a point in, the late 20th century where everything was about avoiding any sense of beat or groove or any sense of tonality, me combining my egghead training with the electric guitar in my body brought both rhythm and melody back into it. I gave up the guitar for a decade as I was trying to be a serious composer. And then you get out of grad school, nobody's paid to be interested in your work anymore, and and I just started to hold the guitar again, and I noticed that my body is very creative, and was a good partner to my brain, and my body brought groove, rhythm, beat back into the music, which was, provides a grid for syncopation, and syncopation is rhythmic's version of the blue note, right? So I kind of put those things together to incorporate that background.
We're speaking with the Grammy-winning Steve Mackey, whose Urban Ocean will be performed at the Shed here at Tanglewood on Friday night.
Let me just say, let's hope for really good weather, because on my bucket list, I was a student here in 1984, a student at Tanglewood, composition fellow, and there is nothing like the environment of a BSO concert in the Shed on a balmy evening. So I would like to check that off of my list.
I thought you were going to wish for a storm because it's called Urban Ocean.
No.
I don't think that this
we
should
want
be allowed.
We want a balmy evening, and that would make one of my dreams come true.
All the thunderstorms are supposed to happen during the week, last I checked, but we'll just keep our fingers crossed and knock on all the wood.
All right.
But tell us about Urban Ocean. Did you return to the guitar for this? Will we be seeing you shredding up there?
I will not be myself shredding. But the guitar is a big part of the way I approach the orchestra. The guitar is kind of the modern day organ, right? An organ is just a controlling keyboard, and you engage certain pipes to get certain effects, and that's like me and my effect pedals, right? So distortion and delay, and there's echo effects and distortion effects and looping effects, and all the things that are at my disposal as a pedal board really influence my composition. And where Brahms composed at the piano, I compose at the guitar with my effects. And a lot of those things can't directly translate. Certainly echo effects can, but a lot of things can't translate. But I'm really interested in kind of the sound of one hand clapping. What does my imagination come up with to try to, at least capture the oddity of something, the weirdness of something. So but Urban Ocean is equally inspired by, this is a great tradition of water and music. Lots of composers were inspired by water. Debussy, La Mer, for example, a lot of Ravel, and Mendelssohn, and just, there's lots of water pieces. So I jumped at this opportunity. It was commissioned by the Aquarium of the Pacific. They asked me to just kind of consider the fact that Southern California is the home of some of the densest and most diverse marine population anywhere in the world, and also densest and most diverse terrestrial human population. So that's what the prompt was.
Getting back to that one thing out of place that just grabs your attention.
The wrongitude.
The wrongitude.
The blue notes.
I love the wrongitude.
I love the wrongitude too.
And it's sort of I do also have a question about you teaching here and you coming here to learn and then coming back and teaching. But is that also the appeal of bringing in instruments that aren't necessarily usually part of the orchestra as well, and then doing things like prepared drums?
Sure.
As part of concerto.
Yes,
Because who prepares drums?
I prepare drums and I prepare guitars, and absolutely, it's part of the, just color, to give you, that's the spark of color, which, as we've discussed earlier, pitch and rhythm and color, they're all inseparable. And so you need a couple of those things to work together to really make an impact on the listener.
What was it like as a student, and did any of those experiences inform how you teach when you teach here?
Well, I would say, sort of a tangential answer to the question, that I never took an orchestration class. I never studied orchestration. But I have a reputation in the world, if I might be so immodest, as being a good orchestrator. I've written 24, 25 pieces for orchestra, so just that experience. But everything I learned about orchestration, I learned being a student here and going to the 10 a.m. BSO rehearsals with my score in hand. A lot of my mates at the time, my cohort, were still in bed recovering from the night before, but I religiously came here, looked at the score, and listened to the conductor. Let's just hear the English horn and the double bass. And wow, that's cool. Yeah, I got to remember that. I'm going to steal that. And really developed a larceny to develop a lot of sounds that I could put in my back pocket and use for my own purposes. So that was the best part of being a student here. And now teaching here, I'm a much different, I mean, that was exactly 40 years ago, now that you mention it. I hadn't done those calculations.
We're sorry to have brought it up. It's often painful when we do our own similar calculations about how much of our life is gone.
Yeah, and I was just starting out. And as I said, now I've written 24 orchestra pieces. And I'm at a great place as a teacher because I feel like I don't have anything to prove. I have a lot of experience, and I feel like it's really, for me, my goal is to really help the students be as much of themselves as they can. I went through a period where I tried to teach them how to be me. Then I went through a period where I started, oh no, that's not good. So I was hands off and didn't do anything. And now I'm in a good place where I can feel like I can really identify, like, what is it about you that is really cool, and help them identify that and grow that.
On the way, more with composer and Grammy winner Stephen Mackey, who's part of this weekend's Festival of Contemporary Music at Tanglewood.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM. Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. More of our bonus conversation with Grammy Award-winning composer Stephen Mackey from our time at Tanglewood yesterday.
Steve Mackey, the Grammy winner, who will be performing Urban Ocean in the Shed here at Tanglewood this Friday. We started talking about how you tuned in to classical music because of that Blue Note in Beethoven, the 8-track in your car. When you're working with students now, how much of popular culture, popular music is influencing these students that you're working with, which are some of the finest musicians in the world, who will go on to be the famous names and the virtuosos that we'll continue to hear about for the rest of our lives? Does popular music, in the way that it influenced you, influence them?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is, we're coming out of kind of the mid-20th century where that was verboten. You weren't supposed to have popular music. I understand it was a rough century, 2 world wars, a Holocaust. Any kind of, nationalistic reference, reference to the folk was kind of taboo.
Yeah.
And the music was supposed to be some rarefied universal above all of that. And I think, my generation, in different ways, me with the electric guitar and singers, and sort of, shifted that, and now it's okay again. And in my teaching, I try to tell students, guilty pleasures are not allowed. If there's something that you really love, you got to find a way to get that in, because that's how you're going to be you. The thing that individuates one composer for another is their entire body. There's going to be a lot of composers that are interested in some one little niche of composing, but there's going to be very few that have that niche, and that niche, and you bowl. You like bowling. And you do this, and you play the banjo. You take all that into account and just chew it all up. That's what's going to make individuals. And in a sense, this isn't radical. What was weird is the blip in music history that was this festival in Germany called Darmstadt, which is the one that laid down all these decrees about no octaves, no major triads, no groove, and that's what we're recovering from. But that was a blip in music history. I like to use Mozart as an example. Mozart was interested in Austrian folk songs and Turkish military marches and learned counterpoint from the Bach boys, generation before, Italian opera and Italian folk songs, and all these things. In his time, he was a mutt. 40 years later, after his death, somebody started calling his music classical music. I mean, that's the epicenter of what we now call classical music. So I think what composers, my generation and younger, and the students that I encounter here are doing is in effect actually more in the tradition of classical music. I like the reason I converted from rock music to classical music is I saw classical music as the mother of all music. I mean, it's music that's trying to distill all of life's experience into a listening experience. It's not music to dance to. It's not music to seduce by, do your laundry by, just to keep you awake during a drive. Classical music is music that's trying to, life, death, loss, and joy. It's trying to capture everything. So you need all the tools, and by now allowing yourself to incorporate your guilty pleasures, I think it serves that better than that little blip we had in the middle of the 20th century.
Why composing over conducting?
Well, that requires a certain administrative talent that I don't have. It really does.
It was that whole period where you let the kids just do whatever they wanted. That's not going to work for an orchestra.
Yeah, right. I do some conducting, and I used to think that I was better at conducting my own music than conductors because I knew it better. But as my career, grew and my reputation grew, and I, for lack of a better word, a higher class of conductors started to be engaged to conduct my work, I realized, oh yeah, you really are better than me. And you really do know how to make an orchestra do things, and you have that special relationship with the orchestra. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to conduct if somebody asks me, but really great conductors, they do a really great job and do better than I could do.
You've done things for orchestra, for sure, but a lot of your pieces are for smaller ensemble. Like, how do you feel about the difference between writing for something smaller and then writing for the many moving parts of a larger body?
Yeah, I'm really thankful that I have the opportunity to do both because they are very different. For one thing, in smaller music, chamber music, one of the pieces that we're doing on this program, electric guitar and string quartet called Physical Property, you suggest a lot of things, and there's something alluring about suggestion. In an orchestra, you can be explicit about it. There's enough people to do whatever it is that you want to get done. On the other hand, with all those moving parts, you do have to make broad strokes. So going back to Beethoven, there's a huge difference. Just open the score to a Beethoven symphony and compare it to a score of a Beethoven string quartet. Beethoven string quartet, lots of little black dots, very intricate. And the symphony is big, broad strokes. So I think of it as like the orchestra is like painting a mural on the side of the building, and chamber music is a Japanese miniature that you can be really detailed with, and I love that detail. I love getting in there and you do that, and have that intricate interplay. But I also like urban ocean, the big waves of sound, I live for both of those things.
Is there any instrument or item that you would like to work into a piece that you haven't yet?
Whew, man, that's a really good question. No, in the sense that right now I'm more driven by concept and humanity, like music. I just wrote a big theater piece based on my mother's memoir, and I'm kind of digging into. Maybe it comes with age. Maybe I'm just sort of digging into the deep recesses of my heart and soul, and aspects of humanity that I want to kind of represent before I lose the ability.
Steve Mackey, before we let you go, when you listen to guitar now, are there contemporary guitarists that you admire and love and try to turn people onto, even though that's not necessarily where you spend most of your world right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's this one guitarist that, a couple of guitarists, 3 guitarists actually. I wrote a concerto for two of these guitarists. They're very different. One is named Gigi. She only, like Cher, goes by one name.
Yep.
And
she's amazing.
She's amazing.
She played at UMass. She's fantastic.
And she kind of came up as a classical guitar virtuoso, but in my piece, she plays electric, and she plays very well. And another person is... the second of 3 is Gretchen Menn. She's the lead guitarist for a band called Zepparella, which is an all-female Led Zeppelin tribute band. It's really, really great, and nails Jimmy Page, but also has her own thing and plays classical guitar as well. And her husband is the most amazing virtuoso shredder, I think, on the planet right now. His name is, he's Italian, Daniele Gottardo. And if you listen, my son's also a guitar player, and we listen to him and our jaw just drops. It kind of makes me want to give up the guitar, but then I think, it's okay, I'm a composer, I'll keep plodding away. But it is just amazing just what he does. He's sort of anointed by Steve Vai as, Steve Vai's great best friend and greatest guitar player living. But he's, he takes this
Our director,
tapping.
Tony Dunn, is going to listen to this on the whole drive home from Tanglewood today. We love a good shredder.
Okay. Daniele Gottardo.
We'll look for him for sure.
Amazing, yeah.
Grammy winner Steve Mackey, who with the Boston Symphony Orchestra will be performing Urban Ocean, your composition, in the Shed here at Tanglewood this Friday, July 26th at 8 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Festival of Contemporary Music starts tomorrow, July 25th, and goes through July 29th. And at least according to the website, you can hear a different Stephen Mackey composition each day of the festival. Find more info at bso.org.
Thursday on the Fabulous 413, we will finally and properly introduce you to Jen Krassler, entomologist, farmer, and manager of 2 farmers markets in the area.
Sorry for bumping her today, but she'll be on tomorrow.
And we'll still love her.
Yes, and our weekly chat with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern.
I can't imagine what you'll talk about. Nothing at all happened this past weekend.
It's just another boring week in politics. But if you've got a question for the congressman, you can email us at thefab413@nepm.org.
And if you were curious about that last guitar player that Stephen Mackey mentioned, we're listening to him right now. Listen to him shred. This is kind of amazing. This is Daniele Gottardo. I mean, it's not, it's just so well-tempered because it's not too much and it's not too little.
I grew up on Yngwie Malmsteen, so I'm used to all this shredding. I love it.
It's just wonderful.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I am Cleve Smith, and we will see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.